Welcome back, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here for this explainer. Today, we're diving into a text that is, quite honestly, mind-bending. We're going to unpack a wild paradox: how incredibly specific ancient rules about eating gazelles and harts actually hold the key to understanding modern therapeutic boundaries. I know, right? It sounds like a huge leap. But by taking apart a series of these ancient texts one by one, we're going to build a bridge from ancient rituals straight into the modern mind.
All right, here's our roadmap. We're going to break this down source by source. First, the Torah's foundational text. Then, the commentaries on sacred space. After that, we'll hit the Talmud and this idea of the superposition of meat. Then, the Tanya's dimensions of love and the HaShiloach on inward expansion. Finally, we'll synthesize all those spiritual layers together into one big picture. Okay, let's dive into this.
Section 1. The Torah's foundational text. Location and intention.
So we have to start with the plain sense of the text, what we call the pshat. This is where the physical rules of the game are set up. Listen to this quote from Deuteronomy. However, you may slaughter and eat meat within any of your gates whenever you desire. The unclean and the clean may eat it, as of the gazelle and the hart. Now, what immediately jumps out at you here? It's this fascinating idea of gate dwellers. You're slaughtering within your own gates, not at some central altar. And even cooler, both the ritually clean and the unclean get to sit down together and eat it, using the gazelle and the hart as the ultimate example.
Basically, the text is setting up a really profound dynamic of location and intention. Like, where and why are we slaughtering this meat in the first place? Are you doing it at the holy altar purely for God? Or are you doing it right at home within your own gates just because you're craving a steak? The source text uses this brilliant, super relatable analogy. Picture a mother preparing a massive feast for her kids. She might not eat her own cooking, or maybe she does, or maybe she cooks the whole thing just for herself. That perfectly captures the complex intentions going on behind sacred, holy offerings versus your everyday secular dinner.
Moving to Section 2. Commentaries on sacred space, the analytic third. Now, if we step away from the plain text to find the deeper rhythm vibrating beneath it, we get to the Adaret Eliyahu. This commentary brings a highly analytical framework to the table, speaking a language really influenced by the Vilna Gaon. He points out that the rules of consumption operate across three strict dimensions: time, place, and person. Holy offerings, they are completely locked down in all three. But everyday, secular meat, or disqualified offerings, they totally shatter those boundaries. They can be eaten at any time, in any place, and by literally any person, even someone who happens to be ritually unclean.
Notice how everyday meat radically expands past the strict limits of holy offerings. The person dimension shifts from just the priest to absolutely anyone, clean or unclean. The place shifts from the holy temple curtains straight to your own front gate, and time goes from a rigidly fixed day and night schedule to simply whenever you desire. It is a total democratization of the whole experience.
And this is exactly why Rashi focuses on the gazelle and the hart. Rashi points out that these animals represent a totally unique, wild state. Think about it. They are perfectly kosher to eat, but they are entirely exempt from being brought as sacrifices. That means no mandatory priestly gifts like the shoulder, the cheeks, or the maul. None of it. They exist entirely outside the sacred system. They just represent the pure, untamed, day-to-day natural world.
Our source highlights a fantastic contrast here between Kodashim, the sacred realm, and Chullin, day-to-day life. The sacred realm requires absolute reverence. I mean, the author compares it to how you wouldn't recite a holy prayer inside a bathroom, right? God's glory might fill the world, sure, but there are still strict boundaries of respect. But in Chullin, in everyday life, clean and unclean aren't these heavy moral judgments. They are just natural conditions that human beings fluctuate through. Just like having a negative bank balance doesn't make you a bad person, being unclean in day-to-day life is just part of the messy reality of being human.
Section 3. Talmud. Superposition of meat.
All right, let's bring in some sharp legal energy to see how the ancients dealt with the absolute chaos of everyday reality. The Talmud, specifically in tractate Chullin, presents this classic legal dilemma of doubt. Just imagine a town with 10 butcher shops. 9 of them sell kosher meat and 1 sells non-kosher meat. Now say you just find a piece of meat lying out in the street. What is its status?
Now, what's really interesting about this is the math. To solve this dilemma of the found meat, the Talmud relies on the rule of the majority. Because 90% of the shops are kosher, you just assume the found meat came from the majority. The Talmud is constantly trying to solve these brain-bending legal dilemmas of doubt by using practical statistical frameworks.
And the author actually coins a brilliant, almost hilarious term for this scenario, the superposition of the steak. Picture it. You buy this beautiful kosher steak, you set it down on the table, and turn your back for a literal second. When you look back, how do you really know a stray dog didn't swap it with non-kosher meat? Well, until you observe it, the steak essentially exists in a state of legal superposition. It's this wild clash between human uncertainty and divine providence. The Torah gives us the vast spectrum of human reality, but it's the Talmud that gives us the practical rules, like following the majority, so we can actually navigate that uncertainty without losing our minds.
Section 4. Tanya, Dimensions of Love.
Okay, let's slow the pacing down a bit. We're shifting away from the strict legalistic math of the Talmud into a much more expansive, reflective space. The Hasidic philosophy of the Tanya teaches that there are actually two dimensions of awe and love. Let's read this quote together. The first stem from human intellect and understanding, while the latter come from above as a divine gift. So one type is generated by your own mind and your own hard work, but the other? It's just bestowed upon you. It turns out the true ability to love flows directly from the one who is loved.
So the crucial takeaway from this chasidic dimension is that love and awe aren't just VIP emotions reserved for the purely clean or the absolutely perfect. Because this love is a divine gift that stems from a deep underlying connection in all things, it actually exists even within impurity. It exists even when we fall flat on our faces or find ourselves in really complex, messy situations. Just like that gazelle and Hart are perfectly kosher out in the wild, divine love reaches us right where we are, in our own untamed, imperfect states.
Section 5. HaShiloach. Inward Expansion.
Now, focusing on the psychological and therapeutic side of things, the HaShiloach looks at the biblical phrase, when the Lord expands your border, and completely flips it on its head. He writes, it does not mean stepping outside one's boundary, but rather that the boundary itself expands from within. And this brilliantly illustrates a profound psychological insight. Real expansion doesn't always mean conquering new external territory. Sometimes, the most incredible expansion happens entirely from within your own borders. We can define this concept as inward expansion, and it really is the ultimate internal freedom. It's your psychological and spiritual capacity to encompass infinite options and interpretations internally. Instead of constantly pushing outward and fighting the external world, you create a vast, limitless universe inside yourself. It allows you to hold multiple states at once, clean and unclean, sacred and secular, without any contradiction.
And you can see exactly how this applies in the real world. In this written reflection, notice how the author, Suri, applies this directly to therapeutic practice. He points out that inward expansion allows a therapist to choose the most relevant interpretation without passion, without memory, right when needed, and preferably as sparingly as possible. It's all about intentionally sitting with a thought, really pondering it deeply, until the internal boundaries are just removed and cleared away. Honestly, it is a stunning application of an ancient, sacred text to modern psychology.
Section 6. Synthesizing the Spiritual Layers.
All right, here is the climax of our explainer. We've analyzed the Torah, the commentaries, the Talmud, the Tanya, and the HaShiloach, each one completely separately. Now we bring it all together into one cohesive thesis. Look at how perfectly these layers map onto one another. The Torah gives us the physical space, the gates, and the meat. The commentaries add the analytical dimensions, expanding time, place, and person beyond the temple. Then the Talmud tackles the legal superposition, showing us how to manage doubt in those expanded spaces. The Tanya reveals the spiritual connection, proving that divine love exists even in those doubtful, imperfect states. And finally, the HaShiloach gives us the psychological expansion, internalizing this entire process so we can hold all these complex states within ourselves.
Which leads us to our grand synthesis. The absolute core takeaway you should carry with you today is this: we are the Gazelle and the Hart. Human beings contain multitudes. We are both unclean and clean. We are wild and we are refined. We exist in this beautiful superposition, constantly fluctuating through different states of being. And yet, because our boundaries can expand from within, all options remain completely open to us. We don't have to be perfect to access the divine or to find true inner freedom.
So I want to leave you with this provocative question as we wrap up this explainer. If true expansion doesn't require conquering the outside world, but rather opening up the infinite space within your own mind and soul, where will you expand your inner boundaries today? Thank you so much for learning with me, and I'll see you on the next one.